thank you for everyone who's taken the time out of the day to join us. This is an update AMA with myself and Logan, both the co-founders of LinqAI, and we are going to just cover a little bit of news, a few updates from ourselves, and then the main bulk of it will be product updates and anything that we need to mention. Then we'll round it off with any sort of Q&A. Without further ado, we'll get cracking. So what's going on at the moment? Obviously, with the volatility of, or the lack of volatility of Ethereum, Bitcoin seems to be doing some useful things at the moment, but alts seem to be lagging a little bit. And that kind of leads me on quite nicely into sort of some of the things that we've sort of come across the last couple of days with regards to altcoins, crypto, and this whole sort of piece around decentralization and what that means and what is the point of crypto, where did it start and all that. And I'm specifically talking about the incident with Sui, if that's how you pronounce it. I mean, have you seen that, Logan?
I also wasn't sure how to pronounce it just before I made sure it was SUI instead of SIU, just so I just referred to it like that just to avoid mispronouncing it. But yeah, it's been pretty crazy turn of events. Been watching it closely, and I think internally we've been having so many conversations with LinqProtocol. It's something we take very seriously, and so hot off the back of this kind of internal mindset shift toward more hardcore decentralization, this was quite eye-opening. So I'll kind of throw it back to you, and maybe you just want to brief everyone that hasn't heard about it, kind of what happened there, and then we can talk a bit more about our thoughts on it.
I'm sure most people do know, but just a brief recap. By all accounts, they had a liquidity pool exploit. Some went through whether it was a decentralized swap, and a hacker basically drained, I think 255 million, it was the figure. And what they said, nicely, he decided to buy some ETH with that. But essentially, as they drained the pool at Sui, or the SUI blockchain, they were able to basically freeze the accounts of that specific, so that they've basically frozen his wallet, so his account, so he can't access them, which obviously is a bit of a stink because it's a double-edged sword, right? This is the issue that people are having, is that if you had invested in SUI, you probably wouldn't give a hoot, swearing there, about the concept and purity of decentralization. You would just be like, thank God they stopped dumping the token that I've invested in. On the flip side, they've been, they're the number 11 token, hundreds of thousands of crypto projects. They're the number 11. Yet they tout the decentralized. I think it's in their bio, like DEX and stuff. So, and they're, let's make no mistake, there is absolutely nothing decentralized about being able to go pause on the smart contract. And they announced it. It's not like they've done it and people have found out they've announced this. They are well aware. But look, once the proverbial hits the fan and you are like hemorrhaging millions, like hundreds of millions, I guess you do anything, right, to stop that rot. So it's not a case of sort of raising this point fingers, because it'll be forever questioned whether it was the right thing to do. And I think most people will probably say it was the right thing to do, but it does raise this whole decentralized, dilemma and the conversation around it. And which obviously is what, the reason we mention this is because of LinqProtocol. We initially were comparing a decentralized platform in compute to a centralized one on the, when I think about it, I think robustness, I think redundancy, a load balancer that can just shift the load to someone else and just keep shifting as long as the network's big enough to prevent sort of downtime. But this is another, another reason for sort of the argument of decentralization versus centralization. And that leads nicely kind of, unless you've got any points, but onto the whole situation with Aleph Zero, which people may or may not have heard. It's like smaller token than, but they were sort of a top 600-700 token, and the CEO just wrapped his tits in, off, and the token dumped about 60%. Yeah, it's a tricky one because you don't know the intricacies of what's going on behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, there is absolutely nothing decentralized about that. There's one man pulling the plug and walking off. Whether he's taking liquidity with him or not, doesn't really matter. The effect that has is in the short term at least, is very painful.
Yeah, I think look, as far as the SWI situation, I think there have been a number of examples in the SUI in the past of chains, at least at a certain stage before they hit maturity, having control to kind of freeze the network or to stop people from moving funds around. Sometimes it's like an exchange level stop. Sometimes people in control of kind of washing platforms are able to stop it there. But I do think it could be argued that they would have got there in terms of platform maturity eventually where that isn't possible. To be honest, I'm not well versed on their white paper or anything, so I can't comment too deeply. But what I can say is I think something that we were considering a lot when we were talking about LinqProtocol, and even the kind of pivot of Link from more loose token utility to something that is more fixed, more on-chain, more kind of verifiable, is that both of us have this very strong core belief in decentralized principles, and to see the space kind of forget what that means. And there's been so many examples this year, between the rise of meme coins where utility was just thrown out the window, to more kind of isolated events like this, where you really do get that sense that decentralization can be more of a marketing term than it is kind of a core ethos of these communities. And a kind of same thing with well, totally different story with A0, but I think it's still the same core train of thought. There is that the responsibility to transparency that we all kind of in the decentralized space appreciate, that seems to be diminishing, and at least the communities don't seem to be as focused on this as a core building block for projects that they're interested in anymore. And again, harkening back to those initial conversations before we announced LinqProtocol, before we started building it, we really do think that decentralization is still a core concept that we should care deeply about and contribute to as much as we can. And I think with LinqProtocol, one of the reasons that we've moved over to the opportunity aside of the decentralized compute marketplace, it really is to solidify the token in some tangible on-chain system. And so I think this type of movement toward something like LinqProtocol, from us building products that had a kind of loose connection with the token to a much more rigid structure where the token is kind of a core part of the ecosystem verifiably, this is something I'm quite excited about. And I think the examples like we've seen in this last week really just kind of emphasize why that's important, not to forget those core principles the space was built on.
Yeah, I mean, we've stepped so far down and away from utility. You have utility, centralized, decentralized. I mean, we've gone so far into the depths of low IQ that this is obviously something that is just easily passed by people. They have no one even researching crypto anymore. There's no sort of like desire and lust to understand about liquidity pools and all the other things that we've mentioned in the past. So yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying. It's a real shame, but hopefully we start to attract some more mindful thinkers and high IQers back into this space where it's not so, catcoin funny, like Dogecoin and very white bear lofi on Sui, I mean, it's painful really to be in the space. It's almost embarrassing when people ask you, what you do. The last thing I mention is the Web3 element, So yeah, I really hope we come back around into something more credible. And I guess all you can do is just keep sort of plowing down that path and hope that you then end up rising above the rest of sort of the dross that does exist in this space. And so yeah, not to depress everyone too much, but yeah, that's kind of where we stand. Last thing probably to mention is obviously the shenanigans that Mr. Trump is still playing out, and the effect that has on the market and the uncertainty there. I'm not sure what your viewpoint is, but I'm quite excited that the fact that Bitcoin is just flirting around 108, 109, 110. No, it's the Google searches for Bitcoin near rock bottom again. There's no real interest. It seems to be
From
dead.
retail,
it's not, not covered in the news or anything. There's no sort of massive thing around it. So I think that's really. It feels like a bear market. It feels like some sort of weird bear market that we're in. But yeah, I'm not really sure. But I think the rest of the year will probably be quite good, and a lot of people playing catch up. But I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that, though.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have a crystal ball, right? But I can say that you and I, on daily, if not bi-daily basis, constantly discuss and reevaluate and reassess where is it going, what should we plan for, what should we prepare for. We have Excel sheets that are literally like best case scenario, worst case scenario, in between scenario, planned out for finances and strategic moves that we can make. So we can't say where it's going to go, and I share your optimism, but not throwing caution to the wind in predicting what we think is going to happen. 9 times out of 10 you're going to be wrong, but that said, we're accounting for 9 out of 10 situations and planning accordingly. So I really appreciate that kind of ethos we have internally within the company, where we know it's such a dynamic space, and so we're very adaptable, very flexible, and we kind of consider like 7 different outcomes every day and try and plan for how we can best handle whichever one comes to light tomorrow. In crypto, it really is, especially owning a project like this, it really is every single day some new thing just changes. sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse, but every day is kind of a unique challenge to approach. And sometimes it's the market, sometimes it's internal affairs, sometimes it's things you just can't control at all. But yeah, that said, I do think that our kind of approach to planning for all eventualities is probably going to win at the end of the day, regardless of what happens in the macro environment.
Yeah, if anyone wants to know, if anyone wants to age themselves faster than the normal going rate, get involved with, try and start a crypto company, a doxed crypto company. I highly recommend it. Okay, perfect. We've covered sort of just a few things that are just going on and just how that sort of, maybe just how you and I think about these things and how they affect sort of what we're doing and maybe tweaking of products and direction of the business. So that's the reason I wanted to mention those, things that we did. So Logan, let's dive in. So we're mainly just going to cover Synthetiq and LinqProtocol today, just because they have the more pertinent updates. That's a fair assessment from the dev side?
Yeah, I think the most teasing things all good and well, but how far are they out? I like to start talking about things as we get closer to releasing cool updates. I'm aware of a number of cool updates coming. I think probably, pivoting off of the kind of decentralization thing, probably let's discuss LinqProtocol first. We are doing something really exciting internally. And I want to just preface this with please understand the scope of the project that we're building. I don't want people to think we're further along than we are. And at the same time, it's a little bit of a moving goalpost as to where complete sits in LinqProtocol. Obviously, there's things that need to be tackled, but on the way there, we're finding all these interesting things, right? So kind of a high level summary is that we built a very large portion of the provider and the kind of requester flow, the one being able to provide compute from their computer and the requester being able to then use it. I was part of the demo that we put out a couple of weeks ago, if even that long, again, one day in crypto, right? But in this demo, we showed off a computer geographically independent from another computer, sending off a container, having it deploy, and then being accessible again from the requester side. That was a cool milestone because that was the first time, well, internally we've done it a couple of times, but the first time we really showed off the progress we're making, where it is possible. We have all the prerequisites needed to do this, at least on the kind of an internal environment. Speaking of the internal environment, this is a place where, look, we currently spend a ton on hosting multiple products. I think we built more products in the crypto space than most people our size, especially in the time that we've been around. That comes with a pretty hefty AWS bill end of the month. And, frankly, it just doesn't make economic sense for us anymore, especially with the work we've done on LinqProtocol. We're now able, and we're in the process of migrating all of our kind of internally hosted apps, Marketer, LinkHub, Creator, Composer, Designer, onto LinqProtocol. Now, when I say that, I must add a couple of clarifications. It's not kind of the decentralized vision of LinqProtocol that we're promising. This is purely an internal version, but the building blocks that we used for this internal version are, what we're constantly adapting for LinqProtocol. We've just kind of taken a snapshot of where the internals work enough for us to justify, and honestly, from a management perspective, I think the innovations we've taken with DevOps on LinqProtocol is quite cool. And so this has allowed us to move a lot of our stuff over, and it's going to cut our AWS bill literally probably by 90%, round about that figure, to just move it all to our internal hosting, running on the backbone of LinqProtocol. And so that's a really exciting update. We're busy moving things over. I don't think any of the production links have moved over yet, but a couple of the development links have moved over. And so, in the not too distant future, everyone using our products will inadvertently be contributing to some very juvenile form of LinqProtocol compute demand, obviously running on our own proprietary servers that we've commissioned from a third party. But as this vision matures, we're going to be able to do more and more things off of these centralized services, like where we're hosting our servers right now. So that's a really cool update for LinqProtocol. And again, not to oversell the progress we've made, but also not to undersell it, right? These are very hard services to build. There's so much configuration, so much technical complexity, and so much privacy concern that we deal with day to day. The fact that we're comfortable enough to leave our own code bases on LinqProtocol should be, I think that's how companies should lead, right? We've built something we believe in the security, privacy, and utility enough that we're moving over our own stack. And honestly, even from a cost perspective, it makes total sense for us. So that's a cool LinqProtocol update. There's a couple of other things that I think will start painting the picture much more vividly. I can't talk too much about them, but you guys will see them come in the next couple of weeks. I think right now, LinqProtocol is quite an abstract concept in a lot of people's minds. I think people understand compute marketplace. I can buy your computer, I can buy kind of some compute power from you, and I can use it for something. What that is, how that process looks, that I think is still quite abstract. We wrote a really great blog article when we released the demo of deployment, and I'd highly recommend everyone goes to read that, because I think that paints more of a picture. Again, if you're familiar with other decentralized compute marketplaces, you'll kind of have an idea of what it is, but I think the next couple of updates we'll start painting the picture for the less technical, where you can start kind of visualizing what this is going to look like at the end of the day and how you'd be interacting with it from a user perspective, not just from the high level kind of abstract, concepts like deploying a container. I think for a lot of our audience, at least the ones we have right now, don't even really understand what a container is or why it's so powerful to do it in the way that orchestrate them in the way that we have. So yeah, I'm very excited to start painting a more visual picture for everyone of what LinqProtocol is going to look like when we're done with it. So I think that's probably enough said for LinqProtocol right now. Again, the core takeaway there is that we built enough that we are happier to be on LinqProtocol than AWS for our internal stack, and so we're moving that across in the coming weeks. And so very soon, a couple of you will be inadvertently playing with a tool hosted on LinqProtocol, even if it is in a very juvenile sense, which I'm very excited for.